It's our final Springwatch and our cast are lined up and ready, even if there's only peeking room for some. There's been weeks of feeding, hours of snoozing, and pockets of heartwarming hope that's had the nation cheering, "Come on, Sid!" But when the music starts, they've always been ready for action. Welcome to tonight's Springwatch.
Hello!
Hello!
And welcome to much more like Winter Than Springwatch 2024, coming to you from the very, very, very damp but never dismal Arne Nature Reserve in Dorset. Yes, we're live here. It's our last show. It is a bit wet and it is a bit cold, but we've got lots to pack in, so I'm not going to dwell on anything more than to say we've got flies tonight.
Oh, no, not again.
We've got flies. Flies are featuring tonight, which is absolutely sensational. And we've also got retromingens. Can I just say, please don't look that up now. Wait for it, OK? Retromingens, it's worth the wait.
Not an easy one to spell anyway, is it, to look up? Well, we've got our lovely Iolo here. Iolo, what have you brought along for
Well,
us?
we are celebrating the little things, of course, but I've brought you two very big things. Look at this fantastic footage by filmmaker Dan Abbott. It's two fin whales off the Pembrokeshire coast. Now, these are the second biggest mammals on Earth, second, of course, only to the blue whale. Look at them lunge feeding, driving themselves forward, opening their big mouths. They have baleen plates, of course, and what they do, they use their muscular tongues, push out the water and hold on to, I think they're feeding on herring. And look at the dolphins, common dolphins, just bow riding there. Fantastic, brilliant things. They grow to about 27 metres in length. Can you imagine that? And perfect conditions for it. And isn't it brilliant to see these mammals coming back into UK waters? But unfortunately, this week we heard that the Icelandic government has given the go-ahead to kill over 100 fin whales. That is horrible. That is tragic, I have to say.
It's just so sad when you see the beauty of them there in those fabulous pictures.
We want more fin whales, not less fin whales.
Obviously, fin whales are very large characters, but we must also celebrate the little characters, and there are plenty of them here at Arne. Lots of beautiful butterflies, little flashes of colour, like with this absolutely gorgeous gem of a butterfly here. But if you go to the ponds, get your eye in, you can see there are some stunning dragonflies. 22 different species here at Arne. Often overlooked, often unseen, as they spend most of their life as larvae underwater. So there's only a little short window that you can really enjoy these beauties. And beauties they are. The colours of them are absolutely exquisite. I would go as far as to say they're dazzling, flamboyant and fascinating and deserve a cheer.
Fantastic spangled insects there in the sunshine. Not much of that about, but I'm going to show you something special now. The best raindrops anywhere in the UK this evening. I know there's a lot of rain about, but these are the best raindrops. Let's go live to our nightjar. Look at those little diamond drops resting on its patient head as it diligently incubates its 2 eggs. Come all the way here from nice warm Africa to the sunny shores of southern Dorset, and look what it's got. But it's doing its job. It's got 2 eggs underneath there. We're not going to see them hatching, unfortunately, but what a bird, so beautiful, dusted with diamonds.
It's,
a bedraggled old sock.
Oh, you've really ruined it now. You've ruined the friendship.
You're fired. OK, we've got a lot of nests to get through tonight because we want to round up all of those that we've been showing you. Let's go live to our kestrels. There's been lots of activity there. We've seen them mature, we've seen them fledge, and thankfully on this wet night, some of them have taken shelter back in the nest box. This is typical of these sorts of birds. They will go back to the nest because it's there that the adult very often brings the food when they return with it. So here you can see quite well flighted already. I can't say they can fly perfectly, but their flapping flight is allowing them to move out and about around that barn, pursuing those adults before they arrive. They've been spending quite a bit of time on the roof of the barn, certainly when it was dry. Adults bringing the food there as well, as you can see. Lots of competition still. They're still fighting over that. You can see this bird mantling here, scarpering away from the other one that's after it. But they're not just protecting the food from their siblings, they've now got to fight off the competition from the local corvids, the jackdaws and the magpies. But it's great to see that little kestrel sticking it to the magpie there, chasing it away.
Is it plucky?
It's a plucky kestrel.
It should be so plucky, plucky, plucky.
Let's move on, let's move on, let's move on. Let's have a look live at our sand martin nest. Yeah, not much. Oh, there's one by the entrance. There's one by the entrance. The other three are huddled together for warmth. I'm not surprised because they feed on aerial insects. With this rain, they're going to be no insects. So they'll just sit it out, but those will fledge soon.
Well, we won't see them fledge,
no, we
though,
won't
will
see them,
we?
but they will fledge soon.
Cameras are being turned off at 9 o'clock. Let's see what our meadow pipits are doing. I would imagine they'll be hunkered down in this rain. You can't really see them at all there, can you? But I can tell you they're doing pretty well. There are 4 chicks in there. You can see they're low down, which makes them extremely vulnerable. So I'm delighted that they're still with us. With all the predation that we've had, it's great to see these 4 chicks are still doing well, and probably, you know, certainly not in this cold weather, but they could fledge very soon. We've had predations on meadow pipits before. We've had fox predate them. We had the nest parasitised by a cuckoo as well. So there we go, flapping their wings, looking rather lovely. But you know what? We're so used to seeing these chicks and these nests on your big tellies at home while you're sitting on your comfy sofas in the dry and the warm. So I thought I'd just bring one of the nests into you. Now, this is a reed warbler's nest, not a meadow pipit's, but they're a similar sort of size. Look at that, look inside. I mean, you can see just how tiny the nest is.
There's a pen for scale.
That makes you haven't got a 10-pence piece.
I haven't got a 10-pence
And that
piece.
makes you really appreciate just how small the chicks are inside it. They're tiny, they're not massive like you see them on your televisions
Look
at
at
home.
that, what an absolutely beautiful piece of natural artistry and architecture that is, isn't it?
It really is a work of art, isn't it?
Just with a beak. Just the beak. That's all they got.
Beautiful.
No opposable thumb, just the
Imagine
beak.
being tasked with having to make that. I mean, you
Yeah.
couldn't do that in 100 years, and yet they can do it in, what, 3 or 4 days sometimes.
Yeah.
Fantastic
Phenomenal.
stuff.
Phenomenal.
Astonishing. OK, strong start here from Arne, albeit in the rain. Let's head north now to Scotland, where Megs is. I hope it's a bit drier up there, Megs.
I really wish I could say it was a bit drier, but literally 2 minutes ago the rain has started to pour, so it's grey skies, but it is still a beautiful day here in the Botanic Gardens in the centre of Glasgow. It's a remarkable landscape that's home to all sorts of invertebrates. Of course, we've talked about the big things, the peregrines, the sparrowhawks, the water voles, but we cannot forget about the small stuff too, because that is incredibly important. And the most recent BioBlitz that they've done here to survey the number of different species found that there were 618 different species that made their home here in the Botanic Gardens. And of course, the insect diversity is just astounding everywhere around the world, even in the UK too. The sizes, the shapes, the colours, once you get your eye into the macro world, well, it opens up this whole new view. And there's a fantastic local photographer, David Hamilton, who goes out to photograph the invertebrates here and in the surrounding area. And he's got some excellent photographs of an orange ladybird looking like an armoured tank, quite a rare thing for Scotland. And then an emerald damselfly, beautiful colours in that alien eyes. Absolutely stunning photograph, a lot of patience to be able to take that. And then this animal, very bizarre. It almost looks like a fly meeting a hammerhead shark, but it isn't. It's a parasitic wasp, and it is highly unusual. It's called Cratamus megacephalus, and essentially this animal was only found this far north, well, as far north as Yorkshire in the 1980s, and then David took that photograph. It was the first record for Scotland, the first northern point, and now they've been found in different places around this area of Scotland. But what an amazing parasitic wasp that is. Now, to understand a little bit more about the macrobiology here, I'm joined by Libby Penman, excellent wildlife filmmaker. Hello, Libby.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to film macro species instead of the big stuff?
Well, I mean, I love long lens wildlife, but macro, I'd take a lot of macro photography, and to me it just sort of like unlocks this whole other world. So yeah, I love macro lenses. You just get this insight. It's just amazing, really.
Totally, and I think it's been rainy today, so we haven't been as successful as we were previously in the week. We found some amazing different species, everything from frog hoppers to exquisite flies cleaning their hind legs, lots of different caterpillars, of course, that are emerging, sustaining bird life. My particular favourite, the flower bug nymph, with lots of glistening spiders. And spiders are some of the most diverse animals that we have in the animal kingdom, and we happen to have one live right now.
We do indeed. We're on a live crab spider, absolutely spoiled on Springwatch. It's a tiny wee thing, but we're just having a look at it just now. It's a beautiful little spider.
Diddy, isn't it? Very pretty.
Indeed. And one of the spiders we've been looking at, we saw earlier on in the same spot, is actually the candy striped spider, which scientific name, Enoanapha ovata. It's an amazing spider. There's two types of the spider in the UK, but we know the one we've been looking at here is this type because it's the only one that lives in Scotland.
Beautiful, isn't it? It looks almost like golden, its abdomen there.
Yeah, so the one that we saw earlier is a sort of like pale yellow colour, but the sort of more iconic version has like this red stripe across its abdomen, which is why it gets its name, the candy striped spider.
Such a beautiful spider, isn't it? That cherry red abdomen.
Yeah, amazing. But these spiders also exhibit some amazing predation behaviours. So they sort of hunt in the typical traditional spider way where they get their prey on their web, but they also do what's known as kleptoparasitism, whereby they steal prey from other spiders. But even better than this, very recent research has shown this type of spider exhibiting what's called marauding. So whereby they actually take advantage of potential prey that's like sort of not warmed up for the day, it's sleeping because it's cold and dark, and then it will wrap itself with its silk round this potential prey, all the while injecting it with venom, and then it will actually suck out its liquefied insides. So yeah, it's a crafty wee thing and quite an unbelievable predation style.
It's remarkable, isn't it? The world in miniature seems quite brutal, but when you get your eye into it, actually it's something really beautiful about it in many ways, I think.
Oh yeah, totally, and that's macro. It just absolutely unlocks this universe that we wouldn't typically get to see, so it's kind of amazing.
Well, one of the invertebrates that we did get is the lacewing larvae. It's a beautiful little larvae, very, very small, but it is a prolific hunter in its own right. They're known for hunting on aphids. You can see it live there. It's quite a small thing, but they can eat up to 200 aphids in a week, which gives it its name, the aphid hunter. And you can see its tube-like mouth parts there, which it uses to hunt. It grabs its aphid, puts a hole in it, and very similar to your spider, Libby, it sucks out the liquefied juices on the inside. But the thing that this lacewing does slightly differently to the spider is that it goes a step further in that once it's consumed its aphids, it takes that dried out skeletal case, sticks it on its back as a mode of camouflage, so it essentially walks around covered in the corpses of the things it's previously eaten to camouflage itself against the aphids that it wants to eat next.
Crafty things, like
remarkable.
These sort of behaviours, mind-blowing.
Yeah, exactly. You never know what to expect with macro.
No, absolutely not.
Well, thank you so much, Libby. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
The world of macro is just mind-bogglingly hyper. It's just so exciting to understand so much more about this world. Now let's head back down to RSPB Arne. I mean, what about that? Things carrying aphids on their back. I mean, it's pretty cool.
I love that, Megs. I absolutely love that. Stops the birds spotting them as well, of course. Top work.
Yeah, lovely. Incredible things. Let's catch up with our live cameras again. What have we got? Let's, tell you what, let's have a look at the stone charts. Is there anything going on there? They be hunkered down? No. Two chicks there, of course. They should be fledging any day, I reckon. If we'd have had nice weather, they'd have gone. Here they are. This is earlier on, before the rain came. Lovely tufted look there. Nest is on the ground at the base of the heather. The adults are bringing in food. Moth there, the male bringing in the moth. And the youngsters of what Michaela would call semi-fledged. They've jumped out, didn't like what they saw, and they've jumped back in, nestled in there. Good thing about this, of course, is that if a fox or a stoat or a weasel came, they would jump. They would be able to fly some distance, so it's kind of a safety thing, really. But for now, in this weather, they'll huddle down, they'll hunker down in there.
OK, let's go live to our goldfinches, another one of those nests we've been looking at. And there, look at that, fantastic. That's one of the adults, presumably the female, and she's brooding the youngsters. Look at the way she spread her wings out, keeping the rain off on this rather miserable evening here. And again, you can see her waterproof feathers ensuring that the chicks beneath her, there are 4 of them in there, are staying dry. She's doing a great job. The weather has been nicer, honestly, it really has. And here, backlit in the early morning, you can see that bird on its nest. As I'm saying, they've got 4 young in there, nowhere near fledging at this point in time. Of course, goldfinch could have at least 2, sometimes even 3 broods a year. What we've been seeing is the male bird there on the left coming in and regurgitating the seeds that it's collected into the mouth of the female. They'll pass down through her throat into her crop, where she'll further digest those, making them more palatable for the youngsters. And it's her job to choose who gets what and when. You can see that she's very neatly and carefully making sure that all of the chicks get a share of those seeds as she again regurgitates them, and that's the process here. One thing I have to point out is, rather like the siskins that we saw earlier in the series, goldfinches do not remove the fecal sacs. So by the time they're ready to go, Iolo, that's going to be another fetid nest, a big ring of poo around the outside.
It's going to be more fecal sac than nest eventually, I suspect, that one. There's one bird we've neglected for a week, so it's time to catch up. Let's have a look at the Poole Harbour ospreys. Yeah, once again, the female, is just, I can see one chick, just about make out one chick. Look at it, bedraggled, soaked up there, high up on her nest platform. But as Chris said, we have had some glorious weather. This was 2 days ago. Preening, keeping those feathers in peak conditions. You can see the chicks, 4 chicks, remarkable number, and one is much younger. One hatched 6 days after the others, but they're bringing in plenty of fish, and she is feeding each one in turn. And that youngster actually is looking pretty good. I've got high hopes for that one. The others, you see, they turn from the very pale to very dark brown colour slowly. And she, well, the nest full there, so she finds it quite difficult to walk around without trampling them. Must say a big thank you as well to the birds of Poole Harbour for allowing us to access that live camera. Brilliant to see.
And whilst our cameras will be turned off tonight at 9 o'clock, you can continue to watch the fortunes of those ospreys, of course. Now, if you're watching earlier in the week, we know that we had the great good fortune to invite street artist Mark Anthony, also known as ATM, to paint a mural just down the hill here at the RSPB Café. Michaela went down to see how he was getting on a little bit earlier in the day before the heavens opened.
I've come down to the RSPB Arne Cafe. Would love to stop and get a cup of coffee, but no time for that because I've come to check up on our street artist, Mark Anthony, also known as ATM Street Art. He's been doing an amazing job at painting a mural. He chose species that Arne is famous for, that really celebrate the rich biodiversity found here and the various different habitats. And these will be here for many years to come to remind people of what an amazing place this is. And you can see that he's made excellent progress in just 4 days. Mark,
Nice
great to meet you. Wow, this looks amazing. You've really done well in 4 days, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been a big job, yeah. A lot of things going on.
Let's have a look at a couple of them. Let's move up to this one. This is the Dartford Warbler. I mean, I know why you've chosen the Dartford Warbler, because it's a real sign of hope here in Arne.
Yeah,
Went from
yeah.
2 pairs in 1965 to 86 pairs last year. Was it difficult?
Well, I mean, as with all my subjects, I want to try and capture the energy of the bird, and they're so characteristic, the way they move and the way they kind of bounce around on top of gorse bushes, that I really wanted to capture that energy. So.
Well, I think you've captured it beautifully, and obviously the red eye and the red chest as well. It's stunning. Sand lizard. Again, I know why you've chosen a reptile, because it's one of the few places that has all 6 of our British reptiles. But why did you choose the sand lizard?
Well, it was largely for the colour, really, because I wanted to get a nice sequence of colours going through the mural. So it's the bright greens and yellow. It's like a kind of jewel-like colours, which really complement the other colours well.
Yeah, a good choice, because I guess if you'd chosen one of the others, it would have just been all very
maybe
brown.
maybe too much brown, yeah.
This is a nice addition. I mean, it really bursts out that purple colour.
Yeah, this is bell heather, and I put this in because it's such a characteristic plant of the heathland, and it's so important, particularly for purbeck mason wasp, because it feeds on the larva of the heath button moth, which is only found on this plant, and the adults also eat the nectar, so it's a significant flower.
Well, that brings us to the one on the end, the mason wasp. I mean, that looks incredible, the way that you've done that. That must have been really hard to get the detail and the different colours.
Yeah, painting small insects is a challenge because every part of their limbs has got a different angle and different movement on it, so it's quite,
one of the rarest invertebrates in the UK.
Yeah.
One of the few sites that it's found on.
Found only here, yeah. It needs the heathland soil, but it also needs closeness to water, and it needs the heath button moth, so yeah, it needs a lot of unique things.
And what's amazing with all of these is you've really got to understand the animal to be able to get the detail when you're painting it.
Yeah, I use lots of reference. I do lots of drawings beforehand to try and understand each animal as best I can, really.
Mark, thank you so much. I mean, you've done an amazing job. We haven't even mentioned, obviously, the nightjar and the ladybird spider, which is gorgeous as well. But thank you. I mean, look at this. When you stand back and look at it, it's absolutely stunning. And obviously, this will be here for many years to come to celebrate the success stories of Arne, as well as our time here. It's nice to leave our mark, isn't it? And it's also really good to see all of these different species painted, understand the habitats they're in. And with that in mind, don't forget that you can order the free poster from the Open University that has lots of other species in different habitats. You know, these sort of murals and pictures, wildlife photographs, films, posters, they can all help us have a real love and understanding of wildlife. And it can give people great joy to share that wildlife, as Roxy Furman knows only too well.
Nature to me is my happy place. I'm Roxy Furman and I'm a wildlife filmmaker and photographer. For my undergrad I studied zoology, and shortly after I graduated I moved up to Scotland, where I started working as a wildlife guide there, and I got my first camera at that time and absolutely fell in love with it. So I decided to pursue it as a career.
Now a week doesn't go by without Roxy escaping into the wilderness with her camera. Whether it be in far-flung lands or closer to home, like today at College Lakes Wildlife Trust Reserve in Buckinghamshire.
I love doing this because it allows me to share my love of animals and nature with other people. I always think that if you love something, you can't hurt it. So for me, that's kind of my big drive, to encourage more people to take action to protect wildlife and nature.
Today, Roxy is joined by her Nana Ruth, who's always been keen to get a window into Roxy's world.
Nana's always loved animals, and that's kind of been passed down to us as her children and her grandchildren, but I've never actually been able to go out with my Nana and be able to show her exactly what I do for work. So it's really special to have Nana here today. It'd be nice to have a day together where you can see what I do for my job.
Yeah, it's nice, it's exciting. Really nice, yeah.
As a teenager, Roxy's Nana was diagnosed with a little-known degenerative genetic disease called Charcot-Marie Tooth disease, otherwise known as CMT.
Until I was about 15, I was okay. CMT is a weakness in the muscles and nerves, affected my feet.
Over the years, Nana Ruth's mobility has decreased. And today she relies on a wheelchair to get out into nature.
We had so many lovely trips out with the family.
Yeah, you do go on some adventures, don't you?
Yes.
When Nana was growing up, then it was almost like CMT, it's something not to be spoken about. They just said, oh, it's muscular atrophy, which kind of does it a disservice because it ignores the fact that it's hereditary, which is why so many members of my family have been affected by it.
Now, where do we
I'm
go?
not sure.
I think we go left.
We go this way? OK. Just a lapwing there, Nana, that just flew down and landed. Sometimes I get stuck down my viewfinder and just focusing on one thing, and then I have to remind myself to look up and see what else is there. You can have a go if you like. We can focus on Goose here, and then to take the picture, you use this button at the front.
Okay, this one.
Yeah. Yeah, you took one.
That's nice. Good night, photo.
It's beautiful. Nice to see them so up close as well through the lens.
Yes.
Because CMT is a genetic condition, Roxy's immediate family recently decided to get tested to see if they too carried the gene. It was a worrying time for everyone, including Roxy.
If I have this gene, the reality is I won't be able to continue doing what I do. I won't be able to carry my kit. I won't be able to have the strength in my hands to use my camera. I won't be able to go on hikes. And luckily, our results came back fine. We don't have it. But nature to me is my happy place. It's where I have some of my best memories, and it just seems so unfair that for some people they can't experience that. There's so much that needs to change to make sure that people can enjoy nature, because it's not just about being here and taking photos, it's about the feeling when you're here and what that does for mental health. Do you think many people know about CMT and what it is and how it affects people?
A lot of people probably don't know about it. Yes, it's difficult. You can't go walk too much. My balance is pretty poor, but I manage, you know. I'm lucky I've got a good family.
And today, with her granddaughter's help, Nana Ruth has enjoyed a rare glimpse into Roxy's world as a wildlife photographer.
Well, I've always liked taking photos, taking some photos with Roxy. It's had a lovely day.
Nana's always loved photographers, but I've never actually done wildlife photography with Nana before, so her being able to take the pictures was really lovely. That's been something really special that I'll always remember.
Thank you, Roxy. That was a courageous, powerful, poignant film about the healing power of nature. And rest assured, I think that many people find nature to be their happy place, and it plays a really important role in their life. But thank you very, very much indeed.
Right, prepare yourself for a raptor fest. We've already seen the kestrels. Now let's catch up with two more, starting with the goshawks. Oh. This was filmed yesterday in the sunshine. Two beautiful goshawk chicks high up on their nest there. They're feeding themselves. Early on, of course, we saw them covered in white fluffy down. They've grown. They're now around 5.5 weeks old with those teardrop marks down their breast. They're looking at flies. Obviously fans of Chris Packham. Chris, you would appreciate
Look
that.
at that goshawk fly, very rare species indeed.
Goshawk fly. And they've got those beautiful sky blue grey. Oh, look at that, they're branching. They're starting to branch. When they get to this age, they start to jump around, exercising their wings. Lovely to see that. And how about our peregrine? High up on Corfe Castle there. More drama with this nest, of course. There's only the one chick there now, and look at it. That is about 4.5 weeks old now. Some of the adult feathers becoming quite prominent. It's losing quite a bit of down, exercising its wings. It's in an old raven's nest, of course, high up on Corfe Castle. Brilliant vantage point there. They like to nest in places where they can see all around them, see any prey coming along. And of an evening, the adults just like to perch up and take in the evening light. So both of those birds obviously doing very well. Now, you would think that those two birds would be closely related. After all, they're both raptors, they're both active hunters. But from a classification point of view, they're actually not closely related. at all.
No, for hundreds, if not thousands of years, we could only ever look at the physical characteristics of these animals and then we would group them on that basis. But of course, in recent times, we've been able to access their DNA far more easily, more cheaply and accessibly. And as a consequence of that, we can delve into the history of how animals have evolved. And this is quite interesting. I've got what we call a phylogenetic tree here. And what we see is that the hawks here, here's our goshawk and sparrowhawk, separated from our falcons, ones we've been looking at, kestrel and peregrine here, no less than 70 million years ago. Now cast your mind back, some of you might remember 70 million years ago, it was a time of tyrannosaurs and triceratops. It was before the asteroid Chicxulub hit the earth and wiped out most of these animals. That was a long time ago. Let's take a closer look at the animals though and see what we can deduce. So firstly, looking at those physical characteristics, the goshawk there on the left, much broader wings, shorter, broader wings, bigger wing area, massive tail there, like a big kite behind it. Peregrine on the other side, much narrower wings, shorter tail, not the wing area, the tail area of the goshawk. And of course, this has evolved because of the different hunting strategies that these birds have. Let's look at goshawk. Hunts in the woods, pursuing all sorts of different prey in a closed canopy situation. It's got to be able to twist and turn through all of those trunks, and look at this bird doing it. And it's able to do that because of those big wings pushing against the air, allowing it to maneuver very quickly, squeeze through tiny gaps. And look at the tail, constantly fanning and contracting, so that it can steer its way through that environment in pursuit of its prey. It's a pursuit predator, it chases after things. What about the peregrine? Completely different. The peregrine waits on high in an open situation, the full sky, and when it spots its prey, it then stoops. It takes it entirely by surprise. And as you know, these birds can stoop in its speeds in excess of 100 miles an hour. Now they do, once they've committed to stoop, have the capacity to change in very small ways the angle, attitude that they're flying. So they can, of course, steer themselves, and they grab that prey by surprise and take it down like this. So both predators, both living pretty much side by side, one in the woods, one in the open, feeding in completely different ways.
But that's not all. Let's have a look at their nesting strategies. Our peregrine up on Corfe Castle, well, this pair has chosen to use an old raven's nest. Not one of our falcons builds its own nest. They either use the old nest of another bird, or they'll nest on a ledge, on a cliff, somewhere high up where they have a very good viewpoint. How about our goshawks? Well, our goshawks will build their own nest high up in a tree, usually a pine tree. Here we are, ripping off branches, gathering dead sticks, building up that nest, and they will use that nest year after year after year. I've climbed up to some goshawk nests that were huge, the size of a double bed. So our hawks, our sparrowhawks, our goshawks will build their own nest. But that's not all. Let me show you on the family tree. We have a question mark here. Now, our falcons are more closely related, believe it or not, if I can get this off, to parrots than they are to the hawks. You might think that's ridiculous, but let's have a look at them side by side. Same shape to the head, but notice the beak. The parakeet's beak is stumpy and hooked. That is adapted to open fruits and seeds. The peregrine has got a hook beak to rip up its prey. And how about the wings? They're very similar too. Long, thin, pointed wings, rapid flight. So it's incredible to think, but our falcons are more closely related to parrots than they are to hawks.
Amazing. But the hawks have got talons and hooked beaks pretty similar to the falcons. So what's going on here? Well, it's convergent evolution. They're both trying to exploit the same resource. They're both predators. They're both catching things, tearing them up, and they need to grip them with their prey. So over a period of time, they've come up with the same solution to the problem, despite the fact that they come from completely different parts of that family tree. Fantastic to see. OK, well, it's still raining down here. Still pretty cold. And just a moment ago, Chris, our live director, said, don't worry, it looks absolutely fabulous. You wouldn't know it was cold and wet and miserable. Well, let me tell you that it is, but we hope it isn't in Scotland.
No, it absolutely is cold, wet and miserable, but I'm still having a wonderful time. Now, of course, this week we've been enjoying all that urban wildlife has to offer, and you've sent in some of your amazing photos, videos and questions. So we thought we'd take the opportunity to delve into some of those. First of all, we had a question from Carol Meller, who asked about lots of different things, and these nests in particular. Do we know which bird laid those eggs? Well, we have to look at a few clues. First of all, let's have a look at the eggs. They're a light cream colour with slight brown speckles, quite similar to a pied wagtail, but if you look at the construction of the nest, you might notice something different. Pied wagtails like to line their inside of their nest. This bird used grasses, mosses, and things like that. The other clue is the fact of where it's nesting, a very peculiar place, which of course robins are known to do. So we double-checked this with the BTO, and they've absolutely confirmed this is a robin's nest. They like to nest in things like helmets. I've seen them nest in the pockets of people's jackets, in car doors. Lots of weird and wonderful places that make them so successful. Next up, we've got Amy Brewer, who asked the question why pied wagtails seem to like car parks. And, you know, whether it be a supermarket or a hospital car park, you obviously see them bobbing and wagging around. Well, it's all to do with the heat island effect. We know that concrete and man-made structures retain more heat, and pied wagtails are really attracted to that temperature. It's where they're at their most comfortable, as they would be within the reed beds. It's a little bit warmer. But the other angle of that as well, of course, is the fact that we are disturbing the predators, so perhaps there's less predation in those more anthropogenic, built-up, man-made areas. Louise Godfrey asked us a question and sent us a brilliant photograph about potter wasps. What a beautiful insect this is. Here it is carrying a sawfly larvae. But when you see them in action, when they're creating their potter wasp structure, that's when it gets really exciting. So these wasps go away and they collect mud, dip it in water, and they can use up to 25 balls of mud to create their potter nest. They lay a singular egg inside. About 2 to 3 hours it can take them to do this, which is just phenomenal. And then they'll go and parasitize something like that sawfly larvae, put it in so that when their egg eventually hatches, it's got something to feast upon. But it isn't just, of course, about the insects. We also have to talk about the mammals too. Now, Louise Rigby asked us a question about, do females hedgehogs fight? Because typically it's always male hedgehogs that you see fighting. Well, females will do as well. This was taken in her garden. And we think that females do this because essentially they're trying to test out the males. If you're strong enough, if you're fast enough, then I might just grace you with the opportunity to mate with me and have my young. So that's why we think that female hedgehogs are aggressive in the way that they sometimes can be. Very noisy when they go as well. Now, when we're talking about hedgehogs, we of course have to talk about habitat fragmentation and our gardens. And Sue Copsey sent in a question asking whether we should be encouraging mammals into our gardens by putting holes in our fences. Fences, of course, are a man-made structure. They're a barrier that things can't get through. So putting something like a hedgehog highway in is critically important, especially for an animal like a hedgehog, which is relisted and vulnerable to extinction. Just 13 by 13 centimetre holes means that animals can move around, they can find mates, they can find resources, food and water, which of course they so desperately need. And it's not just hedgehogs that need holes in our fences. We also need avenues for things like larger animals, including badgers. And this was a really interesting clip of a badger making its way, pummeling through a fence. Of course, they are muscle machines, they're tanks in their own right. I hope this one got through okay. It does look a bit precarious, but if we have natural structures in our fences that enable animals to move around, they can do so much more safely. And of course, that will look after the next generation. Beautiful animals there. But Sue has asked us a bit of a favour to help us convince our husband, Michael, to put in a little hole in the fence for mammals. So, Michael, if you're listening, come on, for the sake and love of hedgehogs, put in a hedgehog highway for mammals all around the country. And maybe that could be your part of contributing to the Wildlife Trust 30-Day Wild campaign by going and knocking on your next door neighbour's door, asking them for a hedgehog highway. Another thing you can also do is take part in the National Hedgehog Monitoring Scheme, which requires volunteers to go out and assess the hedgehog populations around the UK so we can get an accurate picture of how hedgehogs are doing. Volunteers are needed, and we know that without volunteers, UK conservation would not be what it is. So if you have time, please go and do that. All information on our website. Now let's head back down to RSPB Arne, where Chris and Michaela are going to talk to us about a fabulous mammal.
Yeah, we are about to tell you about a fabulous mammal, actually. One of my favourites, second only to the fox, I would say, in the UK.
Well, we're going to treat you, actually, to some footage that we showed you at the start of the series 3 weeks ago when... Was the sun shining then?
I think it was.
No, I don't think it was, actually. I don't think it was. But anyway, let's show you again, because it was absolutely delightful. It's this, pine martens. And here we go. This was in the garden of Les and Chris Humphreys in the Cairngorms. Absolutely stunning. Look at that. They'd actually made an assault course for them. And it worked because they managed to see plenty of them. That was at night, but they then managed to film them in the day as well. And just this morning, they sent us this. Look at that, in the daylight. Kits in colour. How glorious is that? So they moved up there a couple of years ago and they've managed to get loads of footage. Now, obviously, pine martens used to be restricted to just the Scotland and Ireland, and then they spread to Cheshire, Shropshire, Wales, and the New Forest, where you are.
Yep.
So you know what, Chris? You could put a little assault course in your garden, and you might get wonderful footage like this as well.
I've got cameras out all the time, and I'm longing for the day when I check that little card and there's a pine marten on it. It's going to be a big day.
It would just be amazing, wouldn't it? You can imagine they've lived up there quite a few years with those pine martens in their garden, and they've managed to get loads of footage, but not as much footage as a man called Dan. Now, he's been filming hours worth, thousands of hours worth of observations of the population that he's got in his garden. Well, actually, they're in his local area more than in his garden. And these direct field observations have given him an amazing and unique insight into their behaviours. He's learned things that have never been seen before about their nesting, their kit rearing, basically their whole way of life. And some of the things that he's found out have been really rather unusual.
Rather unusual.
Rather unusual,
Well,
Chris.
from a biological point of view, quite interesting. He's been looking at the way that they defecate, the way that they poo. Here's a pooing pine marten for your delectation. You had a little poo there, and this one is pooing behind a tree, a little bit more discreetly. Why are we interested in pine marten poo? Well, simply because these animals are relatively rare in many parts of the country. They're quite secretive, so sometimes the only way we know they're there is by finding their poo. Let's take a look at it. Here it is. Like many carnivores, it's black or dark in colour, but what it often has is a little twist in its tail. And we thought that this was produced when the pine marten was pooing because it was shaking its bottom. Look at Dan's footage here. Here is a pine marten not pooing, but weeing, but undoubtedly wiggling while it wees. Look at that. And here again, it's short, but it's a wee wiggle. There's no doubt at all. So they're wiggling when they're weeing, and in fact what we've discovered is that when it comes to the poo, the twist in the tail, if you like, is only because of the consistency of the faeces and what happens when it hits the ground. But the weeing is more interesting because when these animals are urinating, they're spreading their personal scent, they're communicating. It's really important to them. He's also noticed something else new, lots of new stuff from Dan Bager. Look at this. That's a female and it's weeing backwards. That's not too surprising, but look at the male. Testicles in full view, and it's weeing backwards. Something called retromidgence. Retromidgence. Something that I might be trying at home later myself. After all, why not? Why is it doing that? Well, think about it. It's got a wiggle because it wants to spread the urine over a bigger area, so there's more scent, more likely to be picked up by other pine martens. But if it's a male, it's not going to want to do that when it's weeing forwards because it's going to go all over its trousers, isn't it? So basically what it's doing is it's weeing backwards so it can clear the urine away from itself and leave that scent on the ground and not on its legs.
And
Fantastic, Dan. And Dan's got a book coming out soon. Loads of new pine marten stuff in it.
And we have saved wiggling weeing pine martens to the last show, as Chris says.
I don't need to say it, do I? But you know what I'm thinking, don't you?
Chris, do you know what I love about spring? I love it when, you know, the days get longer, they get warmer, you can sit out at night in your shorts and your T-shirt, and it's just not happening tonight, is it? But I'll tell you what I do love. I love the fact that it's new life for so many species, and for some, that life cycle is quite easy, isn't it? It's quite straightforward. It goes from egg to chick to adult. But for so many of our insects, it's so much more complex, but oh so fascinating.
On the chalk grasslands of North Dorset, early March breathes life into the landscape. And amongst spring's new blooms, one butterfly caterpillar is emerging from a long hibernation. The marsh fritillary. These hairy caterpillars are around 7 millimetres long. They've spent their winter months huddled together within the protection of a silken web. But these longer days of sunshine draw them out from the shadows. Their black coloration allows them to absorb the sun's energy quickly and sets them up for their favourite activity, eating. Top of the menu is their host plant, the devil's bit scabious. Once they've managed to get beyond the short downy hairs, they break through the tough outer edge and gorge themselves. Their voracious appetite means they start to grow in size. And when the outside jacket can't expand anymore, it simply has to come off. They jerk and writhe as they settle into their new skin, turning from orange back to black. Over their lifetime as a caterpillar, they all go through 6 stages, known as instars. But on reaching their 5th, they're big enough to go it alone, embarking on a solo adventure. But travelling across these grasslands can be dangerous. Insectivorous stone chats are ready and waiting. Luckily for the marsh fritillary caterpillar, something else is on the menu today. And this caterpillar can continue on to its 6th and final instar. It just needs to find the perfect position. Here, the caterpillar prepares to shed its final skin and undergo a remarkable transformation. The outer skin pushes its way through the head of the caterpillar, forming the hard outer shell of the marsh fritillary pupa. Over the next few weeks, a miraculous metamorphosis takes place inside. Leaving its life as a caterpillar behind, much of its old body is broken down by digestive enzymes and reformed. Ready for the final act. And by late May, it's time. Pulling its way out of its pupa, a beautiful adult marsh fritillary emerges. Pumping fluid into its wings, they slowly take shape. And this remarkable butterfly is ready for its new life, on the wing.
Remarkable film, remarkable film. I'll tell you what is interesting is that in the film there and at Martin Down where I was the other week, they like dry grassland. But in Wales, marsh fritillaries are in very damp, what we call rhos pasture, damp grassland with devil's bit scabious, the food plant. Two different habitats.
Well, wherever they are, they'll be damp today.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Whilst we're on butterflies and moss, take a look at this. Terry Bagley, great local naturalist, found this. Now look, this is a piece of oak tree bark. You can see that's come off the outside of the tree, but look what is emerging from it. It's become fragmented here and it's quite windy and wet this evening. So I'm going to show you this one instead. This is another one that he's removed from the tree, and it's the pupae, or the pupal case, of a goat moth. So the goat moth has pupated inside the bark of the oak tree, and then, as you can see here, it's broken open and emerged, flying into the night.
But let's just rewind a bit, because before it gets to that stage, it's obviously a caterpillar, and it predominantly spends, well, 3 to 4 years burrowing into the trunk of a tree and eating the wood, and then it goes to the... Keep going.
Well, no, I'm trying to keep it safe.
Then it goes to that stage. That's for about 6 to 8 months, and then it eventually emerges as this, which is the goat moth. And when it flies off, it leaves a hole in the tree, and out of that hole runs this black sap. And that black sap attracts all sorts of other creatures. And we've got an oak tree near here that has those moths on it. So we decided to put a camera there to see what creatures were attracted to that black sap that's running out.
Yeah, and an amazing variety. Grey squirrels we've had there, licking up the sap. Hornets galore, especially in lovely warm evenings. Lots of hornets and ants, you can see. Rose chafer beetle with that lovely green elytra there. But best of all, stag beetle. A male stag beetle came. It's the biggest beetle in the UK, 7.5 centimetres, 3 inches long. I have never, ever seen one. It's really top of my bucket list. What's it doing? Well, it spends 4 years as a larva inside an oak tree eating. The adults emerge. They don't eat, but that one is obviously drinking the sap there, and it's out looking for a female. They're only in their adult stage for a few weeks, maybe 4 weeks. So we're very lucky to see that. Scarce, very scarce insect.
Well, they are scarce, particularly in Wales. I'm not surprised you've not seen them up there. They're more common in the southeast and the south, but there's been a long-running survey conducted by the People's Trust for Endangered Species called the Great Stag Hunt. And if you go to our website, you can take part in that survey. You have to record where you find a stag beetle. Warm, humid nights are possibly the best time for that. And I looked on the site today, and they've already had 6,400 records of stag beetles already this year. And of course, the more we learn about these animals, the better place we are to actually conserve them. And you won't miss them, as Iolo said. They're the largest terrestrial insects we've got, 7 centimetres long, and they weigh 5 grams. Fantastic, fantastic animals.
Well, I hate to tell you, that's brought us to the end of the show and the end to this series of Springwatch 2024. But I tell you, there's been delights, there's been drama, there's been the weird, there's been the wonderful, there's been beauty, there's been brutality. There's never been a dull moment. And Iolo, you didn't see your live badgers, but you brought us plenty of other highlights.
Yes, I did. I've enjoyed Arne, but also, of course, I've had the pleasure of exploring the whole of Dorset. Beautiful county, seen some fantastic wildlife, met some great people. And Megan, I know you've really enjoyed Scotland too.
I've loved every single second of it. My Scottish adventure has been everything I could have imagined and more, and I want to thank everybody who's been a part of that, sharing their wonderful wildlife all the way from the Isle of Bute to the heart of Glasgow. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to share Scottish Spring with you.
And we have to thank everyone here at RSPB Arne, all of the staff, all of the volunteers, all of our partners that have helped with the programme, particularly the scientists that we've rung up in the middle of the night and said, tell us about those flies. We really want to know what's going on. Thank you for all of the photographs, the clips and the questions that you've sent in. We'll be coming back to Arne for Winter Watch 2025 in January, so we'll be looking forward to that. But in the meantime, we want to leave you with some of the most heartwarming, some of the most beautiful, some of the most amazing and astonishing moments of this extraordinary spring, which we've had the privilege of enjoying. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
We've seen longer days, welcome new beginnings, with tentative first steps, bringing hope and fresh determination.
But with new life comes a journey that is both fragile and fickle. The transition from dependence to independence. A time filled with challenges.
The delicate rhythms of spring under pressure like never before. With every cog in nature's wheel, now more vital than ever.
A hidden world brought under the microscope. With the smallest characters often creating the largest of ripples. Showing incredible adaptations, incarnations, and beauty.
Nature's teachers, providers, construction workers, and engineers, laying the foundations for the next generation. In an ever-evolving and changing world.
It's a season that puts a spring in every step, be it big or small. A season full of surprises. A season to be celebrated.